Why was the forest so quiet? She had walked these woods for days, each dawn alive with birdsong, each dusk thick with the hum of insects. But now, silence. The kind that presses against your chest makes you aware of your own breathing. Lieutenant Aaron Blackwood halted in the mist, her Belgian Malinois stiffening at her side. Vortex's ears twitched, then locked forward. His body froze like a coiled spring, muscles rippling beneath the tactical vest that carried more than weight. It carried trust. Aaron lowered her breathing, hand grazing the grip of her sidearm without drawing it. Every instinct told her they weren't alone. The mist clung low, curling through ancient evergreens in Washington State's Queen Wilderness. Early light cut sharp blades through the branches, glinting off dew that shimmered like glass. For hours she had moved through this landscape with practiced silence. Not training anymore, not exactly. For her, the wilderness was more than a proving ground. It was memory. It was penance. She slid down behind a fallen log, pulling out a weatherproof field journal. Her sketches were detailed, terrain lines, foliage density, water routes. It looked like reconnaissance work, and in part it was. But behind the precision was something else, a compulsion. For 7 years she'd been chasing shadows that no one else believed existed. A helicopter, a mission, a lie buried deep enough to strangle. She adjusted the collar of her tactical jacket, the motion exposing a jagged line of scar tissue that crawled up her neck before she pulled the fabric higher. She felt it whenever the air turned cold, a burn deep beneath the skin. She rarely let anyone see it. Even Vortex, loyal as he was, had learned not to stare. The dog let out a low chuff, barely a sound, more vibration than bark. Aaron froze, eyes following his fixed stare. Down below, past a slope swallowed in brush and thorns, an unnatural shape cut through the mist, geometric, angular, not stone, not wood. She raised her binoculars, scanning. The outline became clearer piece by piece, rotor blades, a curved nose, the cockpit glass fractured but intact. Her pulse kicked once hard. An Apache helicopter. Aaron's throat tightened. Not wreckage, the machine sat upright, almost pristine, its matte black fuselage dulled but unbroken beneath years of creeping moss and collapsed camouflage netting. There was no crash scar, no torn earth. It hadn't fallen from the sky. It had been placed there, hidden. Her breath fogged the glass of her binoculars. 7 years of questions pressed into her chest all at once. Why here? Why untouched? Why did it look as though the crew had simply parked it, stepped out, and vanished? Vortex glanced back at her, awaiting command. She gave a silent hand signal. Recon. The dog moved down the slope in careful, precise arcs, pausing to scent the air. Aaron followed, descending through wet brush, senses wide open. Every crack of branch, every drop of water sliding from leaf to earth felt amplified. When they reached the perimeter, she circled wide, scanning for wires, trip sensors, hidden charges. Nothing. Whoever left it here didn't expect anyone to find it, or they believed no one would dare look. She approached, palm grazing the cold steel of the tail boom. It was solid, no bullet scars, no blast marks. Registration numbers had been sanded off, but faint imprints remained. She photographed them with a specialized lens clipped to her phone, storing evidence before even knowing what she'd uncovered. "Hold," she whispered. Vortex dropped instantly, ears pinned, body rigid. Aaron climbed into the cockpit, boots crunching against dust. It was like stepping into a frozen moment of time. Control panels intact, switches still in position. Maps pinned to boards, corners curling from age. Red circles inked around specific compounds in Afghanistan, villages. She leaned closer. One name made her chest seize. The coordinates were too familiar. Her gloved fingers brushed a pilot's logbook wedged beneath the seat. Pages brittle, ink faded. The last entry, deployment authorized. God forgive us. No date, just silence after. Aaron swallowed hard. She had seen those words before, not in writing, but in her husband's eyes the night before his final mission. He hadn't said them aloud, but she had heard them in the tremor of his hands, in the way he held her a second longer. In a small storage slot she found personal items. A faded photograph, a man in flight gear beside a woman with cropped hair. The glare blurred her face, but something in the stance, upright, unflinching, struck Aaron like recognition. Beside the photo, a pair of dog tags. Major L. Corvus, USMC. Her heart pounded. Fingers lingered on the cool metal, the weight of truth pressing into her palm. Vortex's sudden whine broke her trance. She looked down. He was pawing frantically at the helicopter's underbelly, nails scraping against an almost invisible panel. Aaron dropped, unfastening a multi-tool from her pack. The screws were corroded, but with enough pressure the panel came free. Behind it, a waterproof case stamped with Umbra Black, a classification few in the military ever even heard of. And beside it, a sleek titanium case, smooth except for the biometric locks that glowed faintly even after years untouched. Her pulse thrummed in her ears. These weren't abandoned scraps. This was evidence, deliberately hidden, something never meant to be found. Aaron took photographs of everything before sliding the cases into her pack. She checked her watch. Light fading fast, too dangerous to linger. "Command, this is Blackwood," her voice low, controlled. "Priority discovery at map coordinates 437926, requesting instructions." "Static." She tried again, different frequency, different encryption, static. She pulled her satellite phone. No signal, clear skies overhead, yet nothing. A chill slid down her spine. That wasn't failure, that was suppression. Someone was jamming comms, someone who didn't want her reporting. She set up an observation post 800 meters away, hidden in rocky terrain. Vortex kept watch while she tested every secure line she had. Nothing but silence. When night dropped hard across the wilderness, Vortex growled low, body trembling with warning. Aaron killed her small light, pulled on night vision goggles and scanned. Heat signatures, 10 of them, moving in patterns, coordinated, military. No insignia, no identifiers. Black-clad figures sweeping through the forest toward the helicopter, some establishing containment positions north and south. This wasn't a recovery team. It was a hunt. Aaron's gut tightened. She retreated higher into the rocks, laying false trails, guiding Vortex to a perch that masked their heat. From there she watched. The operators moved with precision she knew well. Special operations. Not amateurs, not mercenaries, but no flags, no accountability, ghosts in the night. They breached the cockpit, searched every compartment. Frustration rippled through their movements. They hadn't found what she had taken. Aaron's hands trembled slightly as she pulled the titanium case from her pack. She could almost feel it vibrating with consequence. The lock glowed softly, waiting for fingerprints and retinas she didn't have. But she had training and time. Her tools were small, precise. She worked quietly, bypassing failsafes, sweat dampening her brow despite the cold. 40 minutes of silence, then a hiss as the seal released. Inside schematics, a hardened military drive. She slotted it into her secure tablet. The screen lit up and a man's face appeared. Major Lowell Corvus, the man from the photograph. Aaron's heart slammed once against her ribs. His eyes on the recording were tired, lined with grief. He spoke of something called Thanus, an atmospheric weapon, designed to suffocate life without touching structures, tested not in simulation, not in controlled range, but in a village. 47 civilians dead, children, mothers, aid workers. Aaron's throat closed. Her scar burned like flame all over again. The last log was different, urgent. Corvus's voice cracked with controlled rage. He said the brass had ordered everything destroyed, that he couldn't live with it, that there was only one person he trusted if things went wrong. His voice lowered, and Aaron leaned closer. "Lieutenant Blackwood is the only one I trust with this." The screen cut black. Aaron touched her neck unconsciously. Her breath trembled. The pieces, The scars, the silence, the unanswered years began to align in a picture she didn't want to see but could no longer deny. Above the tree line a drone hummed, then another and another. Her seal transponder beeped on its own, broadcasting her location, betraying her. She yanked it off, crushed it against rock, but the sound of the drone swelled. They were circling, closing. She pressed a hand against Vortex's flank, steadying him even as her own pulse thundered. "They're coming for us, boy," she whispered, voice breaking, "and they won't stop." The forest seemed to lean in around her, ancient trees swallowing the stars, the night alive with invisible pursuit. Erin pulled her collar tighter around the scars on her neck. Somewhere inside, something shifted, fear hardening into resolve. If they wanted silence, they'd chosen the wrong woman. How long could she run before they caught her? That was the question pressing against every step, every breath, every decision. For 3 days, the wilderness became both prison and sanctuary. Erin moved only under cover of darkness, her body a shadow against stone, her dog her second pair of eyes, ears, and instincts. During daylight hours, she burrowed into caves, crevices, the hollows of downed trees where heat signatures blurred into the cold rock. She wrapped herself in emergency foil, not for warmth but to scatter infrared. Vortex curled tight against her, his flank rising and falling in rhythm with hers. Overhead, drones swept, low at dawn, circling at dusk. Always three, sometimes more, their patterns coordinated. She counted the seconds between passes, charted their orbits in her notebook. Each night she adjusted routes, doubling back, leaving trails that led nowhere. But no matter how far she veered, she always felt their presence. Patient, relentless. The titanium case weighed heavy in her pack, but it was nothing compared to the drive inside her tablet. She replayed the recordings again and again. Major Lowell Corvus staring into the lens. His jaw clenched, his voice a weapon of truth. 47 civilians. Erin pressed her hand against her neck more than once. She hadn't wanted to connect the words with her own scars, with the night she should have died. But denial had a short shelf life. She remembered the roar in the sky, the sudden fire without flame, the way oxygen seemed ripped from her lungs. She remembered clawing toward water, her body burning even submerged. She remembered silence after, the silence of the dead. Her husband had been there. He hadn't been killed by insurgents, as the reports claimed. He hadn't been lost in crossfire. He'd been silenced, because he planned to speak. At night in the dark, Erin let herself feel it. Rage, grief, a hollow ache that pulled her chest inward. She whispered into Vortex's fur, "We weren't supposed to survive. Neither of us." The dog's steady breath grounded her. His eyes, reflecting green through night vision lenses, told her she wasn't alone. But in daylight, discipline returned. Every movement calculated, every pause deliberate. She studied the documents, the schematics. The weapon was more than she'd feared. Thanos wasn't theoretical, it was perfected. An invisible suffocation, deployed with surgical efficiency. Cheap, deniable, devastating. Why keep records of something so damning? Why bury a helicopter instead of burning it? Unless someone wanted her to find it. That thought gnawed at her, more dangerous than drones. Had she been led here? Was this discovery chance or design? By the third morning, her doubts hardened into certainty. She reached the edge of the wilderness. Ahead lay a rural highway cutting through the forest like a scar. Normally, this was her extraction point, end of training cycle, transport waiting to return her and Vortex to base. But what she saw made her blood run cold. Black SUVs, military transports, positioned at quarter-mile intervals, engines idling, men with long rifles watching tree lines. Containment. Erin pulled back into cover, heart hammering. She scanned again, slower this time, vehicles both east and west. Net tightening. They weren't just sweeping the woods, they were waiting for her. Vortex leaned against her knee, silent, but his body trembled with awareness. He knew. Erin crouched, pulling her pack around. From a hidden compartment she withdrew 3 memory cards, copies of the drive's contents. redundant, waterproof, each marked in her careful hand. She slid them into the dog's vest, fastening straps with steady fingers. Then she added a folded sheet, names, coordinates, numbers that mattered if she didn't make it out. She pressed her forehead briefly against Vortex's. "Contingency plan, boy," her voice caught low. "You know where to go." The dog didn't move, didn't whine. He waited, eyes locked on hers as if asking whether she truly meant it. She gave the hand signal anyway, a command they'd practiced but never used for real. Vortex hesitated only a heartbeat. Then he turned, muscles coiled, and darted into underbrush. Silent, swift, vanishing into green. Erin's chest cracked open with loss she couldn't afford to feel. If she failed, at least the truth would still run on 4 legs. She straightened, securing her pack, the original drive still inside, heavy as judgment. She holstered her sidearm, unlatched for quick draw. Then, against every instinct, she walked openly toward the highway. The reaction was immediate. Doors slammed. Tires crunched gravel. Teams fanned out, rifles raised. Laser dots danced across her chest, steady and unflinching. From the lead SUV stepped a man she recognized from dossiers, though never in person. Colonel Emmett Thorne. Silver hair, crisp uniform, the easy arrogance of a man who never heard no. He raised a hand, and weapons lowered, though not entirely. He walked toward her with measured calm, like a predator who knows the prey is trapped. "We've been looking for you, Lieutenant," he said, his voice smooth, detached. Erin held his gaze, shoulders squared. "Finding your helicopter must have set off alarms." His eyes flickered, almost a smile. "Interesting. Most would have reported such a discovery immediately. But you chose to investigate alone, almost as if you knew what you'd find." Her mouth was dry. Standard reconnaissance, assess before reporting. Thorne circled her, hands clasped behind his back. "There's nothing standard about you, is there, Major Corvus?" The name hit her like a strike to the ribs. For a moment everything stilled, the drones, the rifles, even her breath. Major Corvus. Her cover, her carefully constructed life as Erin Blackwood, cracked wide open in 3 syllables. She forced her voice steady. "You seem confused, Colonel. My name is Lieutenant Blackwood. Check my record." He gestured, and an aide brought forward a tablet. On the screen, a younger version of her, hair different, scars not yet carved. Major Erin Corvus, military intelligence, presumed dead in Afghanistan. Thorne's smile thinned. "Did you think a new name, a different branch, would hide you? Those burns on your neck are as distinctive as fingerprints." Her hand twitched toward her collar before she forced it still. She would not give him that satisfaction. The weight of 7 years crashed against her chest. Every step she had taken, every door she had fought to open under a false name, every night haunted by silence, it all collapsed in the space between them. "You engineered it," she said quietly. "That wasn't combat, it was a weapons test." "Regrettable field test," Thorne corrected, voice smooth as glass. "Unexpected results." 47 civilians, she hissed, "and my husband." His eyes sharpened. "Your husband planned to expose us. He left us no choice." Her hands clenched, nails biting her palms. The urge to draw her weapon burned, but the rifles surrounding her made it suicide. And Vortex was out there. If she died now, his mission might die with her. The pack on her back grew heavier by the second. The truth inside it pulsed like a live charge. She understood now. She hadn't stumbled onto the helicopter. She'd been led, used. They had dangled bait, confident she'd come, and she had. "You used me," she whispered. Thorne's smile was almost kind. "To finish what your husband couldn't. You've led us to what we needed, the original drive. Where is it?" Erin's lips curved faintly. "Gone, destroyed years ago." He studied her, unreadable. Then he nodded toward his men. "Take her, we have time to persuade." They moved in, boots crunching gravel, restraints ready. Erin's mind raced, not fear, not yet, strategy. She had minutes, maybe less. And then from the tree line a sharp whistle cut the air, not hers. Heads turned, rifles shifted. Vortex stood at the edge of the forest, chest heaving, eyes blazing. But he wasn't alone. 3 figures emerged behind him, 2 carrying cameras already filming, one in a federal marshal's uniform holding credentials high. Colonel Thorne's face went hard, fury replacing confidence. Erin felt a surge of something she hadn't allowed herself in years. Hoping. Why hadn't he seen it coming? For the first time, Colonel Thorne's confidence faltered. The federal marshal's voice cut clean through the wilderness air. Colonel Thorne, you are detaining a U.S. service member without jurisdiction. Stand down. Cameras rolled, lenses glinting in the gray morning light. Every rifle, every shadow in black armor was caught on record. Deniability, Thorne's greatest weapon, slipped like sand between his fingers. Erin stood tall, even with rifles still aimed at her chest. She didn't move, didn't blink. For 7 years she had been hidden in shadows, forced to bury her scars beneath names not her own. Now, with the cameras catching every line of her face, every burn across her neck, the shadows peeled away. Thorne tried to recover, voice snapping sharp. This is a classified operation. You have no authority here. The marshal didn't flinch. By order of the Justice Department, we do. Evidence was transmitted to federal oversight 6 hours ago, enough to halt any action against Lieutenant Blackwood or Major Corvus. The name echoed, Corvus, out loud, undeniable. Erin felt the weight of it ripple through the men surrounding her. Some lowered their rifles slightly, uncertain now under the eyes of the world. Others shifted uneasily, recognizing that this was no longer a clean capture. Erin met Thorne's eyes. For the first time she allowed her collar to fall, revealing the full extent of her scars. The burned tissue crawled up her neck, brutal and raw, more truth than any words she could offer. I was in that village, she said, voice steady, every syllable sharp enough to cut. Doctors Without Borders, 47 civilians. I survived in an irrigation ditch while your weapon burned oxygen from the air. I listened to children suffocate. The words didn't shake, they carved. The cameras captured everything, the scars, the tone, the controlled rage, and Thorne knew it. His jaw tightened, the predator mask slipping to reveal something darker. Not fear, contempt. You don't understand the stakes, he spat. Thanos is bigger than you, bigger than me. It's survival. Our enemies won't hesitate. Why should we? Erin's hand flexed at her side. Her throat ached with memory. Her husband's voice, the last night they spoke, honor the oath, not just the orders. My husband believed in the oath, she answered, quieter now, but the silence made it louder. You killed him for it, and you'll answer for it. Before Thorne could reply, rotor wash thundered overhead. 3 Blackhawks dipped low, insignia visible on their bellies. Military police. Dust whipped across the highway as boots hit asphalt. Lines of armed MPs surged forward, and from the lead helicopter stepped a figure who carried authority like armor. Admiral Sarah Acaffer, head of Naval Special Warfare Command. Her presence said everything. The Joint Chiefs were already involved. Colonel Thorne, Acaffer's voice carried like iron over the chaos. By order of the Joint Chiefs, you are relieved of command, pending investigation into unauthorized weapons testing and falsified combat reports. The black-clad team froze, caught between conflicting chains of command. Some glanced at Thorne, others at the Admiral, and in those moments of hesitation, Erin saw it, cracks in the wall of silence. Men and women who had followed orders too long without asking why. Acaffer's eyes cut to Erin. Lieutenant Blackwood or Major Corvus, your transmission reached us directly. We verified the contents. Erin remained at parade rest, every muscle tight with exhaustion and control. Admiral, I can explain. There is nothing to explain, Acaffer interrupted softly. You exposed what we were meant to bury. For that, you have our respect. From her pocket, Akafor pulled a set of dog tags, gleaming in the morning light. She extended them toward Aaron. Your husband's remains were misidentified, buried under a false name. He will have a proper burial with full honors. Erin's throat closed, her fist curling around the tags like a lifeline. The cool metal bit into her palm, grounding her in a grief she had kept sealed for 7 long years. Around them, MPs restrained Thorne, who struggled but did not resist. His eyes locked on Aaron, his voice low and venomous. This isn't over. Some secrets stay buried for national security. Aaron met his gaze without flinching. Not this one, not anymore. Vortex padded back to her side, eyes fixed on Thorne, hackles raised until Aaron's hand touched his shoulder. The dog stilled but didn't relax. The standoff shifted into procedure. MPs collected evidence, secured weapons, and led Thorne's men into custody. Yet through all the movement, Aaron felt detached, suspended in a moment she wasn't sure was victory or just another beginning. Akafor stepped closer, lowering her voice. Your country failed you, Major, but today you saved it from itself. Aaron's jaw tightened. She wanted to believe it. She wanted to feel the closure, but deep down she knew this wasn't the end. Justice had only just begun. 6 months later, Arlington National Cemetery stood quiet in the morning light. A flag-draped coffin rested above fresh earth, a name carved into white stone, Major Lowell Corvus, defender of truth, ultimate sacrifice. Aaron stood in full uniform, rank restored, scars visible and unhidden. Vortex sat at perfect attention beside her, eyes unblinking. Around her, an honor guard moved with precision. The chaplain spoke of duty, of sacrifice. A rifle salute cracked through air that had waited too long for it. 7 years late, but finally, her husband was honored. When the crowd dispersed, Aaron remained. She knelt, fingers brushing the earth. From her pocket, she pulled the photograph she had found in the helicopter. The two of them, years ago, standing shoulder to shoulder before everything burned. She placed it against the stone. Silence stretched, heavy but not empty. For the first time, she felt his absence as presence. He was here, in the truth uncovered, in the justice begun. Admiral Akafor approached, hands folded behind her back. Her tone was different now, not command but respect. The investigation is underway. 8 officials indicted. More will follow. Your husband's fight wasn't in vain. Aaron's eyes stayed on the grave. And the program? Terminated, permanently. The world will never see Thanos deployed. Aaron nodded, though the weight didn't lift. Her scars would never fade. The screams would never leave her ears. But now, at least, they had meaning. Akafor's voice softened. The Joint Chiefs have approved a new division, ethics and accountability, civilian oversight. We want you to lead it. Aaron finally looked at her. Me. You understand the cost of silence and the price of truth. That balance is rare. We can't waste it. Aaron's throat tightened. She wanted to say no. She wanted to walk away, bury herself in anonymity. But the eyes of the young SEAL candidates watching from a distance changed everything. Girls who had heard her story, who stood straighter when they saw her scars. Her husband's words echoed again. Honor the oath, not just the orders. When do I start? She asked. Akafor's lips curved faintly. Now. The Pentagon, 6 weeks later. Project Corvus, a name chosen not for power but for memory, for sacrifice. Aaron stood in her new office, sunlight breaking over the city beyond. On her desk lay a case file marked urgent. Another operation, another shadow. Vortex sprawled at her feet, his loyalty as constant as the scars on her skin. She picked up the file, her reflection in the glass window staring back. No longer hidden, no longer silenced. This was no longer about vengeance. It was about truth. It was about those who had no voice. And she would not let silence win again. What did it mean to lead when trust itself had been broken? Aaron stood at the window of her Pentagon office, rain sliding down glass in thin streams. Below, Washington pulsed with routine traffic jams, umbrellas, people rushing as though nothing had ever burned in silence halfway across the world. But Erin knew better. She had lived long enough in the cracks between truth and secrecy to recognize how fragile everything was. The office was new, the walls freshly painted, the nameplate on the door etched with Project Corvus, but the photographs inside were old. One in particular anchored her, an image of the Afghan village before Thanos erased its breath. Children smiling, structures intact. Life captured and stolen. She hung it on the wall the first day, not for decoration but as a reminder. Every decision would answer to those faces. Vortex lay stretched out at her feet, the steady rise and fall of his chest a grounding rhythm. He had seen her through fire, through silence, through the moment truth finally cracked open. Now, as always, he was the one creature she didn't need to command. He already understood. On her desk sat a file marked urgent. Her deputy, Captain Jada Wheeler, stood across from her, arms folded, eyes sharp. Wheeler had been a JAG Corps prosecutor, relentless in cases others preferred to bury. She was younger, unscarred physically, but her gaze carried the same iron Erin recognized in herself. "The Oversight Committee has approved full access," Wheeler said, voice clipped. "Tomorrow at 800, classified operation in Southeast Asia, discrepancies in casualty reports, supply logs, and communications. The pattern looks familiar." Erin flipped the file open, scanning. She didn't need Wheeler to say it. She saw it immediately. Reports that blurred fact and fiction. Civilian deaths attributed to insurgent fire despite evidence of advanced systems deployed. Phrases too carefully written, signatures missing from chains of command. Echoes of Thanos. Her scar ached, phantom fire tightening across her throat. She closed the file. "We move at 800. Wheeler studied her. "Are we expecting resistance?" Erin looked back toward the rain. "Count on it." That night, alone in the apartment the Navy had provided, Erin couldn't sleep. The city's hum was nothing like the silence of wilderness. Here, everything buzzed: electric lights, distant sirens, helicopters crossing the Potomac. But the noise didn't soothe. It only reminded her of the hum of drones, the rhythm of rotors that had haunted her escape. She sat at the kitchen table with the dog tags wrapped around her fist. Her husband's tags. The metal edges dug into her skin, a reminder sharper than any scar. She replayed the videos from Corvus one last time. His eyes tired but determined, his voice steady but breaking. This wasn't combat, this was a test. The video ended, as always, with the sound of another helicopter and his final words. "Lieutenant Blackwood is the only one I trust." Erin closed the tablet, chest tight. She whispered into the empty room, "I hope I've earned that." Vortex lifted his head from the floor, ears pricked. He padded over, resting his chin against her knee, warm weight pressing into her. She ran her hand over his head, grateful for loyalty that didn't ask questions. "Tomorrow," she murmured, "we find out if the silence has really broken or just changed masks." Morning brought sharp sunlight and sharper resolve. Project Corvus assembled in the briefing room, half a dozen hand-picked operatives, each chosen not for blind obedience but for integrity tested under fire. Wheeler at her right, analytical and unyielding. Captain Morneau, logistics expert with scars of his own. Lieutenant Chen, intelligence analyst whose family had fled authoritarian regimes. Each face reminded Erin, truth was fragile but not impossible. She laid the file on the table. "We've been cleared to investigate. This isn't about one operation, it's about a pattern. Civilian casualties hidden. Systems tested without authorization. Cover stories written so carefully they almost disappear." Chen leaned forward. "The language, it's the same as the Thanos reports. Different weapon system, same signature." Erin nodded. "That means the silence we broke 6 months ago wasn't the end, just the beginning." The room stilled. Each person understood the weight. They weren't just investigating corruption. They were pulling on threads tied to power structures that wouldn't hesitate to cut them loose if necessary. Aaron's voice lowered, almost reflective. We don't do this for medals. We don't do it for recognition. We do it because silence costs lives. My husband understood that. He died for it. We're here so no one else has to. For a moment, no one moved. Then Wheeler spoke, voice firm. Then let's make sure their silence doesn't win. Later in her office, Aaron stood again at the window. The rain had cleared, sunlight cutting gold lines across the city. Beyond the horizon stood the Pentagon, the Capitol, institutions built on ideals she still wanted to believe in. Her scars itched beneath the collar, as though reminding her the past was never gone. She touched them briefly, then let her hand fall. "Ready to make some noise, boy?" she asked softly. Vortex raised his head, eyes gleaming. He didn't need words to answer. Aaron picked up the case file, the paper heavier than it should have been. She walked toward the conference room where her team awaited, each step steady, deliberate. She knew what came next wouldn't be easy. She knew the shadows had not vanished, they had simply moved. But this time she was not alone. This time she carried authority and with it, responsibility. The mission had changed, but the heart of it had not. It was never about revenge. It was about truth, about dignity that did not need to shout. Aaron pushed the door open, dossier in hand. Her team straightened, waiting for her word. She gave a short nod. "Let's begin." Why did the air in Washington feel thicker when the truth drew close? Aaron adjusted the strap of her pack as she stepped out of the SUV. Around her, the city buzzed with indifference, commuters spilling from metro stations, aides rushing with folders, tourists snapping photographs of monuments. None of them knew what file she carried. None of them knew what silence she was walking into. The briefing that morning had been routine on the surface. A classified operation in Southeast Asia. Reports of an insurgent stronghold eliminated with surgical precision. Official documents claimed minimal collateral damage. Yet the numbers didn't add up. Local aid groups reported mass civilian deaths. Casualty counts ballooned in whispers. Photos surfaced of buildings intact, bodies collapsed inside. It was the same signature, the same design, not Thanos but something born of its blueprint. Captain Wheeler walked beside her, crisp in uniform, jaw set. "If the Oversight Committee hadn't cleared this, we wouldn't even be here. They want us to peel back layers, but only so far." Aaron gave a short nod. "Then we peel until it bleeds." Inside the federal building, marble floors echoed under their boots. Security checkpoints barely slowed them. Their clearances had been stamped at the highest level. Yet Aaron felt the eyes. Guards, clerks, even other officers. They all looked just a little too long, just a little too sharp. They reached the secure briefing room. Behind closed doors sat a handful of men in pressed suits, and one general with ribbons heavy on his chest. His handshake was firm, but his eyes cold. "Major Corvus," he said, ignoring the nameplate that still read Lieutenant Blackwood, "you've stirred a hornet's nest." Aaron met his gaze evenly. "Then let's smoke it out." The man's lips tightened. He gestured toward the file laid out on the table. "You believe this operation was improper." "Improper," Wheeler cut in, "is one way to describe civilian massacres hidden under doctored reports." The general's jaw flexed. "War isn't clean." Aaron's scar burned beneath her collar. She touched it unconsciously, then dropped her hand. "War isn't the same as testing weapons on families." The room chilled. She opened the file. Satellite images confirm structures left intact. Local aid groups confirm oxygen deprivation symptoms. The language of the after-action report is identical to the Thanos cover stories. Someone has resurrected the program. The general leaned back, eyes narrowing. "And you think dragging the nation's dirty laundry into daylight serves anyone?" Aaron's voice was low, but it cut. "It serves the truth." For a long moment, silence pressed in. Then one of the suits cleared his throat. Major, you're asking us to consider that our own military already did this once, Aaron interrupted. I buried my husband because of it. I carry scars because of it. Don't tell me it can't happen again. Her words landed heavy. Wheeler glanced at her, worry flashing, but Aaron didn't look away from the men across the table. Finally, the general sighed, leaning forward. You want access to the classified files. You'll get them, but tread carefully, Major. Some shadows are cast for a reason. That night, Aaron returned to her apartment, tension heavy across her shoulders. Vortex paced the room, restless, as though he sensed her unease. She sat on the floor, resting her forehead against his. They're giving us access, she whispered, but not because they want truth, because they think they can control it. The dog whined softly. Aaron closed her eyes. Her husband's voice echoed again. Honor the oath, not just the orders. But what if honoring the oath meant fighting the very men who claimed to defend it? She didn't sleep. The next morning, Project Corvus gathered in a secure archive room deep inside the Pentagon. Boxes stacked high, digital drives locked behind glass. Wheeler unlocked the first case, sliding reports onto the table. Chen scanned them quickly. Same discrepancies, chain of command signatures missing, civilian casualties written off as hostile actors. It's almost copy-paste from Thanos. Aaron leaned over, eyes narrowing. Look at this, authorization code. Wheeler's brows furrowed. It's old. That code was deactivated years ago. Unless someone kept it alive off the books. The air grew heavier. They weren't just chasing a ghost program. They were staring at its rebirth. But before Aaron could process it further, the lights flickered, then died. Emergency red washed the room, sirens wailing faintly in the distance. Doors sealed automatically, locking them inside. Aaron's instincts flared. She pulled her sidearm, scanning. This isn't a drill. Wheeler's tablet buzzed to life, then crashed. Chen's systems went black. The room was silent except for the low hum of lockdown. Then a voice filtered through the intercom. Smooth, cold, familiar. Major Corvus, always where you don't belong. Aaron's chest tightened. Not Thorne, he was still in custody, but someone else. Another shadow. The voice chuckled softly. You thought Project Corvus gave you authority. It only painted a target on your back. Aaron scanned the room, jaw tight. Who are you? Someone who believes silence is safety, and you are dangerous. The intercom cut off. For a moment the team was still, then Wheeler snapped. This is sabotage, internal. Someone wanted us locked down. Aaron holstered her weapon, forcing calm into her voice. Then we do what we've always done. We find another way out. She looked at Vortex, who was already bristling, nose pressed to the seam of the sealed door. Find it, boy, she murmured. The dog growled low, then began scratching at the floor near the wall. A vent, small but not impenetrable. Aaron crouched, pulling tools from her pack. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear but from memory. She had been here before, trapped, outnumbered, breathing stolen by silence. She forced the thought down. Not this time, not again. The screws gave way, the vent cover clattering softly. Cool air drifted through. A way out, a way forward. She looked back at her team. Their faces were tense but resolute. They were waiting for her. Aaron touched the scars on her neck, then lowered her hand. Let's move, she said. And as Vortex slipped into the vent first, Aaron knew one truth above all. The silence hadn't ended. It had only grown smarter. But so had she. Why did betrayal always come dressed in the uniform of trust? The vent cover clattered to the side, the cool rush of air stirring dust from the Pentagon's forgotten corners. Vortex slipped through first, claws scraping metal as his body squeezed into the narrow duct. His ears flicked back once, listening for Aaron's command. She gave it with a short hand signal, then followed. Behind her, Wheeler hissed, "This is insane," but her voice was steady. Insane is waiting for them to finish what they started. The ducts were tight, the metal groaning under their weight. Chen crawled last, pulling the vent cover closed behind them. Darkness swallowed them whole. Only the faint green glow of Aaron's night lens headband lit the path forward. They moved in silence, their breathing amplified in the claustrophobic crawl. Vortex guided them, nose twitching, body tense. Twice he froze, ears pricked, and Aaron halted instantly. Once, the whine of boots on metal grates echoed above. Another time, voices, calm, measured, professional. The kind of voices that carried orders. Not strangers, not outsiders, their own. Erin's scar burned hot under her collar. Sweat dampened her back. The memory of suffocating air, the night she should have died, pressed against her lungs. She slowed her breathing, forcing rhythm back into control. After what felt like an eternity, they dropped into a utility room. Dust coated the floor. Abandoned files lay scattered, forgotten. The fluorescent lights flickered weakly, half dead. Wheeler pulled the door shut behind them, her voice low and sharp. They knew where we were. They triggered the lockdown. Chen rubbed his temples, eyes hollow. It means someone inside this building, someone with top clearance, wants us buried. Erin leaned against the wall, pulling the dog tags from her pocket. The cool metal steadied her. She closed her fist around them. My husband tried to expose them, she whispered. They silenced him. They burned a village to ash and called it progress. They turned me into a ghost. She looked up, her eyes fierce despite the tremor in her voice. But not again. We've already dragged them into the light. Now we make them choke on it. The room was silent. Vortex whined once, a low sound as though echoing her vow. Then the overhead intercom crackled alive again, the same cold voice. You should have stayed dead, Major. Your scars made you a liability. You were never meant to walk out of that village. Erin's throat clenched. Every muscle in her body trembled with the urge to tear through walls. Instead, she forced her voice calm, steady. Who are you? The laugh was soft, cruel. One of many who protect this country the way it really needs protecting, not with oaths, with silence. The intercom cut out. Wheeler slammed her fist against the wall. Cowards. Erin shook her head slowly. Not cowards, believers. That makes them worse. 2 hours later, after a maze of service corridors and sealed doors, they emerged into a conference wing. Empty at this hour, save for the echo of their own boots. Security cameras tracked them, the red dots glowing like watchful eyes. Erin stopped beneath one, lifting her chin. Her scars were visible in the harsh fluorescent light. She didn't hide them, not anymore. You want me silenced, she said quietly, almost to herself, almost to the camera. Then show the world what you tried to erase. Wheeler gave her a sharp look, but Erin didn't explain. Some battles weren't fought with weapons. They were fought with witness. By dawn, Project Corvus had secured an emergency session with oversight. Not by request, by demand. The files they had managed to smuggle out, the fragments they'd saved before the systems crashed, were enough to force the committee's hand. The chamber was packed. Senators, aides, military brass, and cameras, official this time, not clandestine. Erin sat at the witness table, Vortex at her side, Wheeler behind her. The weight of eyes pressed heavy. She could feel the murmurs ripple through the room. Some saw her as a traitor, others as a survivor. Few saw her as a soldier who had simply honored her oath. The chair recognized her. She rose, scars visible, uniform sharp, dog tags glinting at her throat. She spoke slowly, her voice low but unwavering. 7 years ago, I should have died in Afghanistan. 47 civilians did. My husband did. The weapon that killed them was not an enemy. It was ours, authorized by men in this city. A rustle spread across the chamber. Erin didn't pause. They called it Thanos, designed to suffocate without fire, to kill people, not structures. They tested it on a village that never lifted a weapon. They buried the evidence. They buried my husband. They tried to bury me. Her hand touched the scar across her neck, the gesture deliberate. But scars don't disappear. They tell stories even when we're told to keep silent. The cameras zoomed closer. Faces across the room shifted, discomfort, anger, shame. "I am not here to destroy this country," Aaron continued, softer now. "I am here to protect it. Silence is not protection. It is rot. And every day we let it spread, we betray the oath we swore." For a long moment, the chamber was still. Then the chair leaned forward. "Major Corvus, are you prepared to name those responsible?" Aaron met his eyes. "Yes." And one by one, she did. Names of men who had signed off on shadows. Names of officials who had turned silence into strategy, each name heavier than the last. When she finished, she lowered her gaze to Vortex. His ears twitched, his body steady. Loyal, silent, but never complicit. Aaron lifted her eyes again. "You want to know what dignity looks like? It doesn't shout, it doesn't posture, it simply acts, and it demands we do the same." By nightfall, the news had broken. Screens across the country lit with her face, her scars, her words. Some hailed her a hero, others called her a traitor, but no one ignored her anymore. Back in her office, Aaron sat in the dark, only the city lights cutting through the window. Wheeler entered quietly, setting a folder on the desk. "They'll fight back," Wheeler said softly. "These men won't fall easy. You just painted a target on all of us." Aaron's fingers closed around the dog tags. She felt the weight, the steel, the memory of her husband's voice. She looked up, eyes steady. "Then let them aim," she whispered. "I've carried worse fire than theirs." Vortex lifted his head, ears sharp, gaze fixed on her as though he already knew. The mission wasn't over, it had only begun. Why did grief feel heavier when it was finally given permission to breathe? The morning was cool, the kind of crisp air that carried the smell of earth and grass. Arlington National Cemetery stretched in neat rows of white stone, each marking a sacrifice, each carrying a silence of its own. But one silence had lasted 7 years too long. The honor guard stood at attention. Their rifles gleamed in the light, their movements precise, rehearsed to perfection. A flag-draped coffin rested above fresh soil, the inscription on the headstone still damp with dew: Major Lowell Corvus, defender of truth, ultimate sacrifice. Aaron stood beside it in her uniform, rank restored, scars visible above her collar. She didn't hide them. Not today. Around her neck hung 2 sets of dog tags, his and hers. Vortex sat pressed against her leg, his posture rigid, ears flicking at every sound. Even he seemed to understand that this ground was sacred. The chaplain spoke of sacrifice, of service, of honor. The words flowed, practiced, the kind spoken at hundreds of burials. But Aaron barely heard them. Her mind was elsewhere, back in the Afghan village, back in the ditch where she had clung to life, back in the moment her husband looked at her one last time before everything turned to fire. The honor guard folded the flag with deliberate care, each motion tight, precise, as though the ritual itself held the weight of history. The folded triangle was placed in her hands, its edges bit into her palms. A rifle salute cracked through the air. Once, twice, 3 times. The echoes rolled across the fields of graves, a sound that belonged to the fallen and the living alike. Aaron's throat closed. For 7 years she had lived in silence, hunted truth in shadows, carried grief like contraband. And now, finally, there was acknowledgement, not enough to heal, but enough to mark, enough to honor. When the mourners began to drift away, Aaron stayed. She knelt by the grave, her knees sinking into the soft earth. From her pocket, she pulled the worn photograph she had found inside the abandoned helicopter, the image of herself and Lowell, side by side in Afghanistan before everything burned. She placed it gently against the stone. Her hand lingered there, fingers brushing the carved letters of his name. "We finished it," she whispered. "They tried to bury the truth with you, but we dug it back up." Her eyes blurred. She blinked, but the tears spilled anyway, falling silently onto the grass. Vortex pressed his nose into her shoulder, a low whine vibrating against her. She wrapped an arm around him, grounding herself in his warmth. "We're still here," she murmured into his fur. "We're still fighting." From a distance, footsteps approached. Erin wiped her eyes quickly, standing as Admiral Akafor came into view. The Admiral stopped a respectful distance away, her posture straight, her gaze soft. "The last indictments were confirmed yesterday," Akafor said quietly. "The committee has been fully briefed. No more cover-ups." Erin's voice was rough. "It won't bring them back." "No," Akafor agreed, "but it will stop it from happening again." She studied Erin for a moment, her eyes lingering on the scars, then shifting to the grave. "The Joint Chiefs want to make Project Corvus permanent. Full authority. Civilian oversight. We need you to lead it." Erin's chest tightened. She looked back at the headstone, at the name carved into permanence. "And if I say no?" Akafor's answer was simple. "Then no one else can do it, not the way you can." Erin was silent, the flag still heavy in her arms. She thought of the files she had carried, the names she had spoken before oversight, the silence she had shattered in a single hearing. She thought of Lowell, his last words, his faith in her. From the corner of her eye, she noticed a small group standing quietly near the cemetery gates. Young women in training uniforms, SEAL candidates, their posture straight, their eyes locked on her. Akafor followed her gaze. Applications from women to Special Forces programs have doubled in 3 months. Many of them wrote your name. You've already changed the shape of things. Erin's throat tightened again. Those girls were watching her, waiting, carrying a fire she recognized. The same fire that had carried her into battle, into loss, into truth. She turned back to the Admiral. "When do I start?" Akafor allowed the smallest of smiles. "You already have." That evening, Erin returned home. The apartment was quiet, too quiet after the weight of the ceremony. She set the folded flag on the table, tracing its sharp corners with her fingers. She sat on the floor beside Vortex, leaning back against him, her body trembling now that no one was watching. For the first time in years, she let herself feel everything. Grief, anger, relief, love. The silence inside her chest loosened, replaced by something fragile but alive. She whispered into the dark, "I miss you." And for a moment she thought she could almost hear Lowell's voice in reply. Not words, but presence. A reminder, a vow. She closed her eyes, clutching the tags against her chest, and let the weight of 7 years settle into the earth where it belonged. Tomorrow she would rise. Tomorrow the mission would continue. But tonight, she allowed herself to simply grieve. Why did power feel heavier when it came not from rank, but from truth? Erin walked the corridors of the Pentagon with a steadiness she hadn't felt in years. The walls hummed with the movement of staffers and officers, the air thick with the churn of daily business, but her steps cut through it all. Her scars caught the fluorescent light with every turn of her head, reminders carved into skin that she no longer tried to hide. Vortex padded beside her, nails clicking softly against the polished floor. People stared sometimes, startled by the sight of a combat dog moving through the heart of the Capitol. But no one stopped them. No one dared. Her office bore a new plaque now, Project Corvus Major Erin Blackwood. The name felt strange every time she touched it, both a disguise and her truth, both survivor and witness. She had been many things, lieutenant, widow, ghost, scapegoat. Now she was something else, a keeper of silence broken. Inside, her team was already waiting. Wheeler, sharp-eyed, a stack of files under her arm. Morneau, steady, his presence like bedrock. Chen, his glasses sliding down his nose as he scrolled intelligence reports. Each of them scarred in their own way. Each of them chosen because they understood that loyalty to truth was harder than loyalty to orders. Erin set her cap on the table, eyes sweeping across them. "What do we have?" Wheeler laid down the first file. Eastern Europe, a weapons test site buried under humanitarian aid. Civilians relocated without record. The numbers don't add up. Chen spoke next, tapping the tablet. We've cross-checked comms, same phrasing, same coded language. Whoever authorized Thanos hasn't disappeared, they've evolved. Erin's jaw tightened. She ran her thumb across the edge of the file, feeling the weight of it. Then we don't just investigate, we expose. Every page, every name. The room went quiet. They all knew what it meant. More enemies, more shadows, more attempts to silence them. Morno leaned forward. You realize the deeper we go, the harder they'll fight back. Erin met his gaze. Then let them fight. Silence only wins when we stop speaking. Her words lingered in the room, heavy but steady. She could see in their faces that they believed her, not because of rank, but because she had carried fire and survived. Later, Erin stood before a window overlooking the Capitol. The monuments glowed in the fading sun, symbols carved in stone, symbols meant to last. But she knew stone cracked. Institutions failed. What endured wasn't marble or steel. It was dignity. Her reflection stared back, scarred, tired, resolute. She thought of Lowell, of the Afghan village, of every face buried in silence because no one had spoken. Vortex pressed against her leg, grounding her. She whispered almost to herself, "We keep going for them." Behind her, Wheeler's voice cut into the quiet. "The press is asking for a statement. They want you to explain what Project Corvus is." Erin turned slowly. "Tell them this. It's not about vengeance. It's about truth. It's about making sure silence never buries another name." Wheeler nodded, understanding that it wasn't a slogan. It was a vow. The first mission launched within weeks. Small, quiet, a probe into the files from Eastern Europe. The team worked in shadows but not in silence. Every finding was documented, secured with civilian oversight, shared where secrecy once strangled. There were close calls, a convoy that trailed too close, a data breach attempt, a leak of Erin's old photos, her scars splashed across networks with headlines designed to shame. But instead of breaking her, it only sharpened her. Because now the scars spoke louder than any weapon. When the mission wrapped, when the files confirmed another hidden program, Erin sat in the debriefing room long after the others left. Vortex at her side, head resting on her boots. She felt the exhaustion press into her bones, but she also felt something else. Not peace, but purpose. She whispered into the empty room, "We're not done." And she knew Lowell would have understood. Weeks later, she found herself once again in front of oversight. This time, the room was different, not hostile, not skeptical, but expectant. "Major Blackwood," the chair said, "do you have a closing statement on Project Corvus's first findings?" Erin rose. The cameras caught her scars in sharp relief. She didn't look away. "This is not just about weapons. It's not just about operations gone wrong. It's about dignity. The dignity of lives that should never have been reduced to collateral damage. The dignity of soldiers who swore an oath, not to silence but to truth. We can't erase what's been done, but we can make sure it never repeats. And that requires something stronger than secrecy. It requires accountability." She paused, her eyes flicking to Vortex at her side, then back to the committee. "Dignity doesn't shout, it doesn't bargain, it doesn't break. It simply acts, and that is what we intend to do." The room was silent. For once, silence felt right, not as suppression but as respect. That night, Erin walked alone across the quiet city streets. The monuments stood tall against the night sky, floodlit and unyielding. She passed them without pause, her steps steady, her eyes forward. Vortex trotted beside her, his breath a calm rhythm in the cool air. Erin didn't need speeches. She didn't need parades. She didn't need anyone to erase the scars that told her story. The mission wasn't glory. The mission was truth, and truth wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple, relentless, unyielding. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.